Well, we've come today to Trealaw Cemetery. It's situated in the Rhondda Valley in South Wales. Now this is a very large cemetery, 92,000 burials here, and they came from the mining communities all the way down the Rhondda Valley. Immediately inside the gate that I've come in, which is not the main entrance, is this war grave to Sergeant C.H. Hicks, the King's Shropshire Light Infantry, and he was aged 31 when he died in 1944. It's nice to see there's still some flowers on this grave. As I walk up the hill from the entrance I came in, you can see there's some fairly substantial tombs here, well kept on their concrete plinths. I'll just take you to see this one, the memorial here, which reads George Edwin Farmer, the husband of Charlotte Farmer, De Witten Street, Tonypandy. Now, Tonypandy, just a mile or two up the road, it's the next village in the valley to Trealaw. Well, I'm working my way up this rather steep path. All the Welsh cemeteries seem to be on the side of a hill, understandably. Again, substantial tombs, and we haven't even scratched the surface. If we pan around to the right, now I have no knowledge of this cemetery, so we're all exploring it together. There's some tombs here with the entrance on the front, so these will be ones where the coffin was lowered into a chamber and then the chamber was sealed up again until the next person in the family will be buried, rather than digging a hole in the earth and dropping a coffin into a plain grave. We look at this one over here, you can get that one. Catherine, the wife of Frank N. Jones and mother of Lottie E. Davis of Porth, that's a village on the other side of Trealaw, and then John Stanley, her husband. And the graves just stretch away just so much to take in. These are the more expensive graves, as you can see, with the entrances marked on the front and the larger memorials. Just take this one because it's easy to read. Margaret of William Griffiths, and most of that is in Welsh, which I just cannot read or understand. This one to Dafydd Watkins, a timber merchant, has a nice carving in the stone at the top here, and there's Jesus as the Good Shepherd with the crook and the lamb. On the corner is this very large granite cross, and the angel, flowers in her hand, very prominent memorial. And this is Wilhelmina, the wife of, well, the daughter, the eldest daughter of George and Mina Webster of Porth. Very impressive memorial. Now this memorial stands out very clearly in the graveyard, very distinctive design, to 4 polished pillars. And if we check down below, we see it's to Tommy Farr, a great Welshman. Tommy Farr was a famous boxer, British and European champion in the 30s, I believe. He was known as the Tonypandy Terror. So this is his memorial. rather ornate, quite different, very nice to see. The great Tommy Farr. Lovely carving on this one. We have the angel, wing spread, and the inscription is to Kathleen Marjorie, the daughter of Kate Richards and the late Charles Tilling, and she was just 20 years old when she died in 1924. I'm continuing my way along this main path which stretches into the distance with all these magnificent memorials each side of me. So many inscriptions to read. John William John. This one has the family name Evans on the end. Anonymous one, Wood. And over there we have John Morgan. Behind him is a cherub on a plinth, and that's Thomas Reese. Charles George Evans. Now down there you can see the chapel where parties would gather before the actual burial, and often the service was held there. These two caught my eye. Very unusual. They're made in metal, in steel, including the curbing around the outside. This is Edith Margaret Reese, age 31 in 1918, and it lists some other names there. And across there is William H. Coles. Now there was a lot of steel making in the valleys because of the coal and the iron ore, so presumably this is the origin of these headstones. A war grave tucked against the holly bush. Sergeant G. Taylor, Grenadier Guards, September 1920, age 32. Now the web tells me that there's some 135 war graves here, First and Second World War. I'll just pick one or two as I come across them. There's one here behind the iron railings, and there's an inscription on the flat stone, and this is Elizabeth Alice Jenkins, daughter of David and Anne Davies, and she died in 1954, doesn't give an age, and their son Flight Officer Charles Lindsay Jenkins, RAF, Volunteer Reserve, missing on active service in 1941, age 21. So this also is one of the war graves. A very large and impressive memorial with the angel, book in her hands, and the inscription is to Edward Jenkins and to various members of his family. Huge plinth here on a corner of two paths with the surname James, and it's Emrys John James, the oldest son of Frank and Eleanor James, who died in 1917, aged 19 years. This is a very impressive cemetery, a lot of very good memorials. Most of them are reasonable to read. It was the main cemetery for the Rhondda Valley. The valley was full of little chapels, great nonconformist area, but they never had enough room around the chapels to bury very many people. So there was this large cemetery opened in the 1870s, I believe, and from all up and down the valley people were buried here. And of course with the coal mining and steel industry, it was a reasonably wealthy area, and that's why we're seeing so many great memorials. On there, Thomas Edwards, 1924, W.J. Jones, 1921. James, husband of Margaret Norman, 1921. This one caught my eye. It's a war grave, of course, but it seems to have gone a bit pink, presumably some sort of algae. This is Sergeant D.D. Davis of the Welsh Regiment, 1918, aged 43. Two more of these metal headstones caught my eye. One on the right is weathered with a coating of surface rust. This one here has been painted, and another name has been added at the bottom, George Reese, by just riveting an additional plate onto the stone. They're quite unusual. Very rarely see metal headstones. Another one here from 1916 and again in 1931. Big solid piece of metal. As we go higher up through the graveyard, the views get even better across the valley. It's a wonderful spot. Beside the path is this one, and we can see that it's in loving memory of Second Lieutenant William Handel Harris, the beloved son of Humphrey D. and Mary Harris of Porth, and he was killed in action 1918, aged 24. And this very large statue of an angel gazing at the hills opposite, and on the plinth we can see this is to Mary Louisa, the wife of the Reverend D.M. Phillips, Tylerstown, died in 1910. And close by is this one to Maryanne Richards, wife of Richard Richards. But we've got this hand, the two hands, and if you look at it, one is very much smaller than the other, and a more frilly cuff on the smaller hand. So very much a depiction of a female hand and a male hand. Everywhere I look I'm seeing the war graves, but with 130 plus in the graveyard I simply can't cover them all as much as I would like to. Just pick this one at random. Corporal E.L. Evans, Royal Army Service Corps, 1942. And at the bottom the family have added, "Only good night, Ewart, until we meet again." This one to Reese Lewis, who died 1913, has a finger pointing upwards, presumably to heaven. Well, I've reached the topmost path of the cemetery. There it goes, stretching right the way down the valley. Huge tomb here for Edwards, but it's been staked out with warning tape. Sadly, it's collapsing. You can see the name Alice Edwards up there, and Edwards and another name on the end. But again, it's been staked and you can see it's falling apart. Well, right up in the top there's a new extension, and the graveyard is clearly still being used. A lot of new stones, and you can see the massive colour from all the flowers from the graves that are still very much cared for. These are very recent graves, 2019. This one clearly a child's grave. just a few months old, with the big decorative butterfly on top. And this one, no name, a metal pole and a large spanner welded across it. No name, no date, but obviously meaning something to somebody. This one to Marian and Jonoi. On the left hand side we have a miner's lamp, connection with the mining industry of this valley. On the left is a large fish or dolphin leaping out of the water. This one with another miner's lamp. On this one we have a drum set. If you do get the chance to visit, you should be aware that it's almost two graveyards in one. There is a massive second section, which I'm just showing you an overview of now. Hundreds, thousands more graves in this part. I picked this one out because there's clearly a story behind it. Mary Phillips, aged 95, but her son John, who died in an air accident, 1944, aged 19 years. This one stood out. Looks as though it has been badly defaced. Underneath it is a modern, highly polished marble memorial to David Islwyn Evans, 1968, and presumably his wife in 2008, but it's just been crudely painted red, and then the top with yellow, sort of household paint. It does scrape off of the original stone, but whether it was done for a goodly purpose or just vandalism, I have no idea. And this corner of the graveyard is an area for just memorials. It's laid out to stone and grit, so it's easy to maintain. And these are for people that almost certainly were cremated but wanted their memorial somewhere to come to and remember that person. Now this seems to be the modern trend. Be cremated and then have a memorial in a graveyard in a cemetery. It is much more cost effective in that burials are expensive and cremations are less so. And I guess the cemetery, it can put these a lot closer than it could than if they were actually having real burials. So this is the modern trend when you die. And another area here with the same, with just the memorial stones. Well, that's my visit to the large cemetery in the Rhondda Valley, Trealaw. There's so much to see here, and it's pretty well kept. The stones are readable and accessible. So if you're in South Wales, take the time to come here and spend a few hours. I hope you enjoyed it. Till the next time.